Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications. I want to switch gears here for a moment and talk about politics. Now, a few videos ago, I said that I was not interested in listening to opinion news, that it actually kind of turned me off. And that's true. For the most part, I really don't like it. Now, when the drama really heats up and the plot really thickens, it does get kind of exciting to listen to all the opinions and stuff. So I have to admit, I've been kind of almost totally engrossed in this impeachment process of President Trump, of the U.S. President Trump. And I've been listening to MSNBC, CNN, PBS, CBS, but I've also taken time out of my busy schedule to listen to Fox. So I've given them a chance to. I find them a lot harder to listen to just because of their, I don't know, the journalism on Fox is just so bitey. It really turns me off, because I'm so used to listening to people talk like that in my daily life. Just that sarcastic kind of, I'm better than you kind of bitiness. It just, I don't know. Now, I don't necessarily buy everything that MSNBC and CNN and all the others are saying, but I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. Now, one thing that I have noticed for myself personally is by listening to these people, all these people talk, you start to kind of get down to the brass tacks of things, and I always kind of ask myself, what did Ukraine have to do with anything anyway? I mean, why is he even contacting Ukraine to get dirt on the former VP Biden, right? And that question was answered, because he was apparently, or he or his son were doing some business dealings in the Ukraine, and I guess there was some corruption there, right? So he was trying to figure out what that whole thing was and use it against him in an election, and hold money that was approved by Congress, which is taxpayer money, for his own political gain, which is where the law was broken. According to the United States, the United States can withhold aid or military aid to any country they want as long as it's not for personal gain, right? So it's kind of like Trump saying to this President Zelensky, hey, I'll give you the $400 million, but you got to give me a $3 million kickback. It's kind of like saying the same thing, and in a lot of ways it is the same thing. So it's a bribery thing. And bribery is one of the few things in the Constitution that's actually spelled out in the Constitution as something that you can be removed and impeached and removed from office for it as a president. Now, the other thing is I always asked was, how did this whistleblower hear anything anyway on this phone conversation? That was not answered for a while. And Trump actually, and I heard this while he was doing his interview, giving an interview from Sean Hannity, one of my least favorite people to listen to on television. But anyway, he answered the question. He said that when a president and a foreign head of state are talking on the phone, there's probably 50, 60, 100 people on the phone call. People from heads of state to, cabinet members to, advisors and so forth, translators, I guess, on both sides. So you're not alone. And both parties know that there are other people listening in on the conversation. And the reason why he brought that up, he's like, why would I say anything about this if I knew all these other people were listening? Well, just the way Trump was in the election and the way he's been ever since, he doesn't care what people think. He's just kind of saying whatever he wants to say whenever he says it. So I don't think that necessarily, that for a normal person, yes, they probably wouldn't say something knowing that there's 100 people on the phone call, but he's not a normal person, right? So now, tying it all into this stuff, right? When George W. Bush became president in 2000, and I say it just like that because I don't think he was necessarily elected. I think that they took the election. I was very concerned about the course of direction of this country and how it would affect the needed changes in this world. And it really set us back decades. And I was right, and Benjamin Creme talked about it, back in the day, and how a lot of the rights and privileges that the United States has held, and the people of the United States have held dear for so long would start to erode, right? Like, due process and so forth. And I've seen it over the last 20 years. It's crazy. And how people just kind of sit back and take it, sit back and take it, sit back and take it, sit back and take it. Just okay, whatever it takes to just get rid of these awful terrorists, I'll sit in my house and I'll take fascism as a government, that kind of thing. And I think that's really where we are right now. Now, the other thing that Benjamin Creme said too is that the Axis powers were the points of focus for the Antichrist energy, but it's also they were the point of focus for the forces of darkness during World War I and World War II. And if you need a history lesson, the Axis powers were, of course, Hitler and the Nazis in Germany, the fascists in Italy with Mussolini, and then the militarists in Japan. Those three made up the Axis powers. And then the Allies, who weren't necessarily perfect countries either, but they were better than the Axis powers, of course. But the United States, Britain, and Russia made up the Allies, the Allied forces, right? They were backed by the hierarchy of Masters of Wisdom, which Maitreya is the head. So that was the great war between the forces of light and the forces of darkness within the last 100,000 years. That was the last time it happened. It happened 100,000 years ago in Atlantean times, but not much is known about that. Now, since then, according to Benjamin Creme, that force of darkness moved. It didn't die. It just kind of transferred locations. And there was a point of focus that was moved to the Pentagon. And you can clearly see that, especially if you're not in the United States, you can see how evil that organization is, right? The Zionists in Israel and somewhere in Eastern Europe around Bosnia, Yugoslavia, and that kind of thing. So those 3 points made the same kind of triangle that the Axis powers did during World War II. A little less, but still very powerful, is what he said. And since the founding of the Pentagon, or the military-industrial complex, as people like to say, every president since then has been influenced by that force of darkness to some degree. The George W. Bush cabinet was very, very influenced by that force of darkness, very much. And that's why we saw the real fascist way of taking over the country and sending us back, back to the past, back of the 60s, 70s, and 80s of the Cold War, that kind of thing. That's what they wanted, and that's what they really accomplished in a lot of ways, is sending the United States back decades. Obama came along, it kind of eased up a little bit. I'm sure he was influenced to some degree. You can kind of see some of his military actions that I'm sure he maybe didn't, I don't know, want to take, but they were influenced probably very much so by the Pentagon. Now, fast forwarding it to the current president, right? Now, when he was elected, there was something in me that kind of just remained calm about him being elected. I wasn't alarmed. I was concerned, but I wasn't like really, really alarmed like I was with George W. Bush. And part of it was I had this thought about Trump that I was hoping for the long shot that he would be such a wild card, because he seemed like such a wild card of a politician. He was rich, so he didn't need money coming from special interest groups, that maybe, possibly, just maybe, there was a possibility that he could flip the script and be much more progressive than he really was saying he was going to be. Well, I was wrong about that. The other side of it is I think that, and it's probably more likely, and I think we're seeing the effects of it now, is he would be that lightning rod that would cause change, that poster boy for everybody in the United States finally saying, you know what, screw it, man, I am done with this. We are going to have to wake up and do something about what's going on, right? Now, to tie it into this information, right, Jesus said in the Bible that the end is always known from the beginning. And these masters know the outcome of all crises. I have a hard time pronouncing that word for some reason. The end and how it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. Just because we're going through it now, it's going to be okay. And even, the Master DK said during World War II, and I'm sure there were a lot of people during World War II that thought that was it. That was the end of the world, right? He even said then, it's going to be fine. We're going to get through this. This is just a part of the step to get there, right? And he was right, because we're still here, right? So the end is always known from the beginning. And these masters know, and Maitreya has even said, that peace is assured, that it is done. We are past the point of no return, where we are now more siding toward peace than we are toward war. I know it's hard to see, but, and we just have to go through the steps to get there, right? Now, politically, are we divided? Absolutely. Now, one might say, oh, we're more politically divided than we've ever been. But according to the masters, this is the sword of cleavage. This is the Christ principle working out in the world. Jesus said, I come not to bring peace, but to bring a sword, right? Didn't he say that? Well, this is what he means. It's bringing to surface all the corruption, all the lies, all the greed. It's making everybody who they are. And that's everybody without exception. If you're a selfish person, you become more selfish. If you're a selfless person, you become more selfless. If you're, angry, you become more angry. If you're, more conservative, you become more conservative. If you're more liberal, you become more liberal. It's all that energy that's bringing this about. And so, but at the same time, it's just a temporary disturbance. It's not permanent. It'll eventually smooth out, and we'll see more synthesis in the world. And we're starting to see it, really. And I remember not too long ago, I can't remember how many years ago it was, I saw two very diametrically opposed politicians. Sadly, they were out of office. One was Senator Daschle, who's very Democratic. And the other one was Bill Frist, who was very, very conservative. Okay, and they were both senators, and they both are always at each other's throats. But when they got out of office, they joined forces with the singer Bono from U2, his one organization, about eliminating all the unsafe drinking water that people drink every day. They get sick and die from diseases all over the world. They said that there were more hospital beds filled with people who were sick or dying from drinking bad and unclean drinking water than anything else. So here are these two diametrically opposed politicians coming together, sitting side by side on a program, talking about this is something that needs to change. And that's what these masters are talking about. They're not talking about removing, one side is better than the other. It's synthesizing the two views for change. And that's what we're going to start to see. Now, like I said, sadly, these two were out of office when they saw the light, but hopefully in the future that, in every country, and even in between countries, the countries that don't necessarily get along or don't see each other will start to get pulled together for change. But it's going to take a voice. It's going to take people rising up. It's going to take synthesis and brotherhood, and that's where Maitreya comes in. His energy is going to synthesize humanity for change. But as Maitreya says, everything is going to be just fine. It's going to be okay. So that's the spoiler alert, is we're all going to get through this and everything's going to be just fine. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day.
Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.